as we have folks kind of flowing in here. So as you're coming in, just get yourself settled. Sarah and I are just going to chat for a minute or two while you come in, and then we'll get started. So I was just talking to Sarah about uh, what she's working on right now. And she's talking about that she's working on a clothing audit and how she wants to make this really smart blazer. So I'd love to hear more about this smart blazer that you have.
So I did a bit of tailoring at university, not a
Mhm.
lot, but I kind of dipped my toe in the water, and I've always wanted to revisit it. But as we were just chatting about, like, I have so little sewing time these days that
Mhm.
when I do, I just want that quick fix. It's like fast fashion. I want that kind of, quick make that gives me that kind of like, great, I've done something creative. I've kind of scratched that itch. But actually, I really don't need any more t-shirts. I don't need any more joggers. I don't need any more pajama bottoms. I am going to leave the house at some point. I need to look a little bit smart. And because I
Yeah.
teach sewing as well, I want that kind of, it's that, we'll probably talk a bit more about this later, but it's that kind of imposter syndrome of like,
Mhm.
I want to look like I know what I'm talking about. I know deep down I know what I'm talking about, but I want to look like I know what I'm talking about as well. And
Yes.
by investing time in doing like more in-depth makes,
Great.
it just gives me that kind of boost straight away to know that I've put time and my expertise into the garments that I've made, and
Yeah.
I can kind of physically represent that. So
Yeah.
that's
I think we're in a very similar spot of our creative journey probably right now. And those of you who are coming in afraid you're missing out on anything, you're not. We're just chatting right now and we'll get started and we'll go over all of this probably more in depth as we get going. But I also am I have been limited time. I have an 8-year-old and there's limited time to sew, or at least it feels that way. And so I've done things kind of quick and dirty for a long time. Not always dirty, but sometimes dirty. And so I really have been embracing slowing down with my details and getting more in depth in what I'm doing. And as I resonate with that deeply. And last year I took on a custom client who wanted custom made shirts made for herself out of Liberty of London silk and like this whole thing, right? So I'm in her ginormous house and it's got like a walk-in closet that is bigger than the home that I own. And I'm wearing, and I also wear things to death, right? So I'm like wearing something I made a decade ago that is like a knit garment and is like seen better days. And I'm like, oh man, I should have dressed differently for this occasion. And so there's part of that too. I get that.
But it's only when you get into that situation, because it's so alien, you've not been in that situation probably for a while or ever, that you
Yeah.
suddenly think like, oh, I'm not ready for this. But
Right? I have the skill, I have the ability, but I'm not showing it on the outside as much
all
as
the
I want to right
tools,
now.
I've got my sketchbook ready, I've got my big, like I have a big like hold all case with all of my tools and my equipment in. It makes me feel really like, ready for anything. But if you're not wearing something, especially when, we do what we do,
Yeah.
um, it just immediately makes you feel like you're not valid.
Yeah.
Like I almost need
Yeah.
the validation of wearing a garment that represents what I'm able to do. So
Right. Which really ties into the idea of a uniform or something like the clothing make the human, right? It's like, and I believe that completely. I mean, I believe that we can wear anything we want to wear on the whole planet. We get to do that, but we have to, it has to be reflective of who we are and how we want to be presented in that moment. And I think that that ties in beautifully.
absolutely. It's interesting you should say about a uniform, because recently I went to do a trade show. Well, I say a trade show, it's like a consumer show, like a craft fair on like giant scale, in the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham. So yeah, it's like very large scale. You're meeting lots and lots of people, and some people will be interested in dressmaking, some people will be interested in crafts and all sorts. But you want to people to immediately know what to expect from you. So obviously you dress your stand beautifully, you put up posters and signs and have samples on mannequins. And then the last thing that I thought about was, what am I going to wear?
Right.
And I was like, that's the first thing that I should be thinking about.
Yeah.
Is how do I actually want to present myself as well as my stand? Because, as a pattern designer, you do represent your
Mhm.
brand, as it were. And what is brand? Because my pattern range is very personal. It's very much I take the stance of putting patterns out there that are kind of the initial tools to help you express yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that people will take patterns and then they'll make them their own way. And right from the very beginning, that's always been my standpoint. It's kind of, don't just take this pattern and take the fabric that you've seen somebody else on Instagram wearing and make it, if you want to do that, if that represents you, then cool, that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid, with this tool that's the pattern, to be able to use the fabric that you love and express yourself. And yeah, I came to realize that actually, with a month to go, I was not expressing myself. So there was a lot of sewing that went on in the run up to the show.
I imagine. I imagine. Oh, let's pause here for a moment, and I want to welcome everyone here. I'm so glad that you've joined us for this third installment of Break the Rules of Sewing. You probably heard that lovely conversation that Sarah and I were just having. We couldn't even stop once the call started. It was just so much fun. I can't wait to talk with Sarah more and for you to learn more about her if you are unfamiliar with her. Um, but until then, before that begins, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So you will see that over on, well, I'm not sure where it's at on your screen, but there is a chat, and I would encourage you to put something in the chat. So maybe if you could, for a moment, put in what you're working on right now and share that with us. You can also put in any questions that you might have. I have a friend of mine on the call here, Amanda. She's going to be reaching out to you if you want to come up live. At the end of the show, you can also put your questions and she can help out with anything on the back end kind of there too. So please, please utilize the chat. It's so much fun to see what you have to say, and we love for you to be interactive. Speaking of being interactive, Sarah and I are going to talk for probably 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So if you think of a question and you want to pop it in the chat and just have us read it, we can do that. Or like I said, Amanda will reach out to you if you want to do it live, and you can come on live and talk to us as well, because we would love to see your face. So that's kind of the way this is going to flow. And then shortly after our show is done, we will have a replay on the website, and it'll be available until June 1st. So if you want to listen to it again or tell a friend about it, and they can sign up and they can get all the replays for the whole series. So speaking of the series, I thought about for a very long time this Break the Rules of Sewing series, because as a sewing teacher myself, I own Kinship Handwork and I have a podcast called In Kinship. I see so many times that I have students that get a little bit paralyzed, if you will, by the idea that they're not doing it right, or maybe they are afraid to mess something up, or they're afraid to use their good fabric. And I wanted to have conversation around the ways in which so many different people approach sewing and how you can really do it in the ways that are right for you. And so that was kind of the impetus for this. And also, Sarah and I were talking about earlier, I have a deep desire right now in my own sewing practice to go deeper into my practices and slow things down a little bit, do more fine tailoring, do more fine details on my projects. And I wanted to talk about that with people who are doing or wishing to do the same kind of things. So here we are with Sarah Laws. She's joining us from the UK today. Sarah, what time is it right now for you in the UK?
Is just gone 5 o'clock. Dinner time.
Nice end to your day then. So I'm
Yeah.
going to let Sarah introduce herself. She has a fashion design history and a sewing pattern company now, is how I'm going to say it. She's going to clear that all up for us. So Sarah, welcome. And can you tell us about who you are and your journey to where you are?
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Tina, for having me on. This is such an exciting series. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to having this chat. So, yeah, I'm Sarah Laws. I run My Handmade Wardrobe patterns, and I have a degree in fashion design, and I worked in the fashion industry for 7 years before I started teaching. And then I opened a retail store and was teaching workshops at the same time, just doing, a bit of everything like you do when you're first starting out. And then I decided in 2019 that we would shut the shop, and so I could completely focus on my passion, which is pattern making. I absolutely love making patterns.
Mhm.
And it's something that I dabbled in when I was at university, but I've gone really, really deep since then. And I actually now do pattern artworking and I do grading for other pattern brands,
Mhm.
including the brand that Tina and I both work for, Charm Patterns, and a lovely brand called Little Rosy Cheeks, which is a kids wear brand, which I've just started actually doing some designing for as well. So my head is all over the place in so many different places, but I love it that way. Variety is definitely the spice of life.
Wow, there is a lot there. So let's back way up and go back to before you were in university. What prompted you to go into fashion design? And have were you a sewist, a home sewist before then?
Yes, so it's all my mum's fault. I will always say this. This is the story that I tell every time. So when I was 11, I think it was 10, 11, I presented my mum with a book of a catalogue, you may call it. I was obsessed with these catalogues that we used to have, like home shopping catalogues. And I presented my mum with a catalogue of designs that I wanted her to make for me. And she turned around to me and said, Sarah, darling, I appreciate your creativity, but I have a full-time job. I am a mum, and I just don't have time.
Yes.
So yeah, she basically said, if you want to create these things, you're going to have a go yourself. And she helped me to get set up on the sewing machine. She helped me to unjam the sewing machine 100 million times. And
Which we
yeah,
all know actually is probably more time and effort than it was to do it herself. So like that's such a mom thing to do, right? Like, okay, I'll show you.
I really, really appreciate like the time that she put into and actually I say the time, it was more the confidence in my abilities because she would just set it up and walk away and let me have a go, let me make the mistakes. And then when I really, really couldn't work out how to fix them, then she would come back in. And I
Yeah,
think that's really taught me a lot about, how to teach as well, given me yeah, a really good basis for the approach that I take when I'm actually teaching.
nice.
Mhm.
Nice. So when you were deciding what to do with the rest of your life and you went to university, how did fashion design fit in?
Well, I remember I'm going to go a little further back again. I remember being about 13 and opening up the big book of careers. I don't know whether you have that in America, but we had this like in our school library, we had this big book of careers, and it basically apparently had every career that you could possibly ever do. So
Mm.
flip to the clothing section, garment section, and I could be a fashion designer or I could be a costume designer.
Oh,
Those were the two options. Now, we all know if anybody has worked in the fashion industry, there are 1,000 different jobs that you can do. You can be a garment technician, you can be a pattern cutter, you can be a grader, you can be a sample machinist. So many different things that you can do. But I just went down the design route because that was what was presented to me. So I
oh,
followed that. I did my GCSEs, which are our kind of starter level qualifications, and then we did A levels as well, which is next level, and then you go to university. But before that you have a foundation year, and that was just so much fun. So the foundation year is basically dabbling in everything. So it doesn't matter whether you've decided that you are going to be a fashion designer or a photographer or a fine artist, you have to have a go at everything. So I did a little bit of videography, I did some jewelry making, I did graphic design, photography, like processing prints in the dark room. And I'm so glad that I did that because it showed me that there was so much more to the world of creativity. It wasn't just, I'm going to design a dress. And it really, I think, molded my approach to my course when I actually went to university.
that's wonderful. I love that. And I have a similar story in that um in choosing the thing I was going to do for the rest of my life. Like the choices presented in front of me were so limited that I actually really struggled to choose. And I think I don't know what would be better. This is not the scope of this call, but I don't know what would be a better way to help our young people see the possibilities out there. But unfortunately, I don't know that we have a strong way to do that. And I'm glad that your university experience so gave you a much broader.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because it wasn't necessarily the actual university course that gave me that experience. So as part of our course, the first 6 weeks we did basic skills. So
Mm.
a lot of universities don't include that, and I'm really glad that they did. So it was like learning how to put a zip in and learning how to do French seams and all the basics. And we had to create a little sample book, which I've still got and I still use, still occasionally get it out. So, when I've got to do a technique for a class or something or for a project. Um, and then we did 6 weeks of pattern cutting, which was using blocks. So it was using a pre-made block, not making blocks, and then learning what we could do with them. So dart manipulation, slash and spread techniques, which is where you basically like fan out the pattern and add volume. That was really, really good, but it was just literally 6 weeks of sewing, 6 weeks of pattern making, pattern drafting, and then off you go and be creative. And obviously they gave us like projects to work on,
Right.
but I actually wasn't getting enough from my course, and I found like I was doing a lot on the side. I did quite a bit of like not bespoke, but like client work, I guess. I was only first year of university, but I did like a few commissions and things like that.
Mm.
And then in my second year, I applied for something completely removed from my, completely separate from my university, but still like I had the time to do it around everything else. And it was called Alternative Fashion Week. So obviously in London we have London Fashion Week, and I studied down in London. But Alternative Fashion Week was very kind of down to earth. It was you can express what you want to. No worries about trends, no worries about high budgets. It was presented in Spitalfields Market, which is like a garment market basically in the East End of London. And it was wonderful. I could just express exactly what I wanted without my tutors' kind of disapproval, because they weren't keen on my designs. My designs were quite commercial, really. In a way, I mean, they were creative enough, but they weren't as off the wall, perhaps, as they
Flashy.
would. Yeah, yeah. I mean, London University, my tutors wanted flashy. They wanted the next Alexander McQueen. And I was never going to be that. I didn't ever set myself up to be that. I just wanted to create beautiful garments that people would want to wear and that would make them feel like their best selves. And that was always like my ethos. So yeah, I actually went and sought out opportunities to express that in university and
Mm.
gave myself more work, but that's what I was there for.
Right. Right. And so it sounds like that might be the reason that, or the underlying vein of why you went from that retail store into pattern making itself, is that desire to empower and to allow people to create something that will fit into their everyday life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the whole reason for creating the pattern range in the first place was because I was teaching people and I was finding that the sizing was either very limiting or off-putting.
Mhm.
An example of that I've literally just come up against again today. So I'm going to do a tailored jacket course with a friend in Wales, and I've had to order a commercial pattern, and I've got to order a size 20, which I don't try not to get hung up about sizes, but I am questioning myself. I'm looking for, and I now know to check, how much ease is in the pattern,
Right.
and like what the finished garment measurements are, so that I can definitely make sure that it isn't going to be huge on me. But it's planted that seed of doubt, and the patterns being um, unpredictable, and all the information that I need not being on the pattern envelope. So before I've bought the pattern, I can't tell whether it's what I want and need. I
Right.
found really, really frustrating. So that's something with my patterns that I've really tried to kind of make sure I include all
Right.
the information.
Very nice. I often have that when I'm teaching, is so I will teach how to use the pattern, commercial pattern, because commercial patterns are as frustrating as ready to wear clothing, often for the very reasons that you point out. And I often say, in a perfect world, they would have both a size chart and a finished measurement chart so that you knew where you're expected to fall into the sizing. And I do teach them, and I know that you know this, and you mentioned it earlier, like we have to let go of that number because it means nothing. And then I teach them to take that and then compare their actual body to the finished measurement, and that's probably the most important number right there, but they're often not included in patterns, which is so frustrating.
Or if they are, they're printed on the pattern tissue. And that's so annoying because you've basically got to kind of get everything out and then do this mad search for the numbers. And we had a pattern the other day. I teach a class called Measure, Alter, Make, which is all about basically like measuring the pattern first and then
Mhm.
altering the pattern and then making your toile, so that you're not basically wasting time making a toile that is definitely not going to fit.
Yep.
So you do a lot
Yeah.
of like, you know, the groundwork first. And yeah, we really, it was a very fitted jumpsuit. So you've got so many things going on there. You've got, you know, do we need a bust adjustment? Do we need changes at the hips? Is the rise going to be long enough? There's so many questions. So we wrote out all the questions and then we went in search, like a treasure hunt, to try and find all the information. And it was all there, but it was just hidden away. There was one bit where we had to actually measure the pattern.
Right.
But it's knowing that you've got to do that, you know, nobody really tells you that you've got to do that. And how would we know, you know, if you follow the rules of sewing, of using a pattern,
Yeah.
you get a pattern out, you cut out your size and you make it up and then you cry.
Right. Cross your fingers and cry. Yes.
So yeah, we really do, right from the offset, you know, before a needle has gone anywhere near fabric, you've got to break the rules for success.
You do. I am it's really fun to hear this because I teach the exact same thing. I teach the same thing of like taking your pattern, checking your measurements, either with a finished measurement chart or on the actual pieces themselves, and making your small adjustments right from the very get-go so you're not wasting that time and effort. And I think that that in itself can be really debilitating for people. The idea that I'm sorry, I have this errant hair that keeps tickling my face. That very idea can be hard because it doesn't it feels like it's not part of the step 1, 2, 3, and why should I have to do this? And I don't want to have to do this, and but it's so valuable.
Yeah. It's like I came to this to sew, not to kind of
Right.
faff around with paper and tape and rulers and highlighter
Calculators.
pens. Yeah, and maths as well. That's the thing, you know, people do get a bit overwhelmed, understandably, when they've got to do a lot of maths and alterations that
Mhm.
require some calculations to start off with, for instance, like a full bust adjustment.
Yeah,
So I see it as my responsibility as a teacher to really break that down to the simplest way of doing it.
yeah,
Because I don't want people to get put off, but I do want them to make garments that fit them perfectly. And it's
because
going
that is
to math.
magic.
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
with you. So tell us, as let's take off the pattern drafter hat for a moment and put on the home sewist hat. So if you were going to make a project, how might that process work for you? Like, what is your first inspiration? How do you choose what you want to do? How do you go through that process of sewing something as Sarah at home?
Okay. So I would love to say that I have a very strategic plan for how I'm going to sew, but I don't. Well, I say I don't. I don't yet. I almost do. Over the past few years, my sewing has basically been, what have I got time to make? And that has included some garments that have been a little bit more involved. Like I made a shearling lined jacket recently, which was a pattern hack of a Merchant and Mills pattern that I'd done before. So I knew that the pattern worked because I'd used the pattern before.
Right.
And then I kind of, you know, hacked it to add the lining and change up a few things, added some pockets, added some cuffs to it as well. Um, but I didn't design that at all, and I really wish I did. So yeah, like I say, I'd love to say like I plan out all my makes really carefully and a dressmaker's planner, and I know exactly what elements I'm using, but I don't at the moment.
Right.
However, I am doing a course at the moment that I'm running, which is a free course, and it's all designed to basically help you find your style and become more strategic about planning your makes. And personally, it's come completely from a personal, I'm being quite selfish about making this because I knew that I needed a plan because I have, as we were saying earlier, I have so little time that actually I need to invest that time in things that I really need in my wardrobe. So right now that's jackets, it's coats, it's layering pieces, it's jeans, trousers, you know, the things that I tend to avoid because they take a long time and they take a lot of fabric and you have to think through a lot of the details. But actually that's what I need. So that's that's how I will be going about it in the future.
So that jacket that you mentioned that you made, the one with the Shirley lining, was that made out of necessity? Was it like, I need a jacket, so I'm going to make one? Or were you inspired by the fabric? How did that come to be the project you worked on?
Okay, so it was inspired. This doesn't often happen. It was inspired by somebody else and what they were wearing. So we run a few events, and one of them we had like a brunch afterwards, like a sewist brunch. And the event is a dressmaker's ball, so it's all like, you know, fancy dresses, beautiful gowns, evening wear, gorgeous. But then the next day, we everybody comes to brunch, and of course they're all wearing their me maids, and so you have another round of, oh my God, I love that. Oh, that's amazing. Wow. You know, what pattern's this? What pattern's that? And I find that more inspirational because I'm more inspired to, well, I want to make more clothes that I can wear every day. So there was a lovely lady called Lucy who was wearing a pink corduroy jacket with the shearling lining. And I was talking to her about it. And she was like, you should make one. I'm like, yeah, I should. So it doesn't often happen like that, that kind of project. I'm usually like, you know, it takes a little bit more time to build up to these things. But she just happened to have a remnant of the shearling left. So she kindly, I sent her a bit of money for postage and she kind of kindly sent it over to me. And it almost was like a bit of a pen pal kind of situation. Like she gave me she got me the fabric and she told me which pattern to use and suggested, and then I decided to use a pattern I'd already got just to kind of, you know, because I was familiar with that. And it was really nice to kind of have this collaborative experience of making a garment together. I've never really had that before. So that was lovely. Yeah, every time I wear it, I think of her.
That is so fun. Like now I want to have, I live in rural northern Michigan where I'm certain there are lots of sewists up here, but I'm like, do we have enough to do a ball and then a brunch afterwards? Because
Oh
that
God, yeah, you definitely should.
good. Every time I have a sewing retreat and it's a small affair, I limit them to 12, but people always wear their me maids to the retreats as well. And we
Yeah.
all get so inspired. I think that everyone probably, I know I certainly do, shortly after I have this big burst of making energy and I make all sorts of new things after the retreat. And it's so fun to be in collaboration with other sewists.
Yeah, it's just lovely to be around people who get you. You
Yeah.
know, there's so many people who I've had this all the way through who are like, why do you spend so much time, you know, making your own clothes? Oh, you can buy them, you know, don't, you know, what are you wasting your time for? Like, what are you wasting your time for buying clothes that have been designed for somebody else? They haven't been designed with you in mind. They're not made for your body. They're not made for your lifestyle. Yeah, I don't, and I get the joy of a hobby and something really, you know, practical, useful out of it at the end as well. So it's just win-win all round for me, to be honest.
100% with you. Oh, that's awesome. So, the name of the series is Break the Rules of Sewing. And so I wonder if you might share the things that are very specific that you think are really important to do when it comes to sewing, and the things that you're like, I don't really do those things. They don't really work for me. I know other people do, but this is what I do.
So, first of all, I would say absolutely you must look at the clothes that you've got in your wardrobe and look at the fabrics that they're made out of and make yourself a list of the fabrics that you love. Because then you won't be swayed by a beautiful print or a lovely color. You will actually make garments out of fabrics that you really like and will want to wear all the time. So in doing my wardrobe audit that I'm doing at the moment, I've realized I've got so much polyester in my wardrobe. And the problem is the sweatshirts that I've made, they're all bobbly. The dresses that I've made in polyester, they stick to me, they cling, you know, they're not they don't look good after 5 minutes after I've put them on. Yeah, I really wish that I had started to kind of invest more time into learning about fabrics sooner. So that would be like number one top tip. Go and like investigate, be like a fabric detective,
Mhm.
basically, and even go into shops and feel fabrics and like look at the labels, because all the labels have the fabric compositions on them, so that you can find out what the garment's made out of. And yeah, use that to guide your makes rather than using just, being swayed by a pretty print or a lovely color. that would be that would be my first. And in relation to that, I would also say washing your fabrics. So this is definitely a breaking the rules. So I don't wash a lot of my fabric. That's really bad. I make a lot of sample garments for a magazine that I work for. And because of that, I don't wash the fabrics because they want everything to look really crisp and clean and new and not washed at all. So I have to break that rule, but every time it gets me, because I'm like, I should just add like an extra inch to the bottom of this hem because it's gonna shrink.
Right. I am so glad you said that because I'm like, I'm over here, my heart's racing. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no. Oh no. So I wondered, did it work out for you? Or are you like not suggesting people do it? Or are you like, yeah, go for it. Don't wash up.
Sometimes it does. I've just made a lovely pair of wool trousers. I am not going to wash those. I'm going to get them dry cleaned. So there's absolutely no need to pre-treat them in any way. I mean, you can pre-shrink them by steaming them a bit, but to be honest, I'm probably not going to have them like highly tailored. So, I think it revolves back to fabric education and learning what you like and how you want the fabrics that you use to behave for you.
Yeah.
Um, I do think if you're using any kind of natural fabric and you intend to wash it, especially like knitted fabrics, you really, really should wash them, because I am the owner of a number of t-shirts that are definitely too short for me now. And there's not much that you can do, unless you're going for that cropped t-shirt look, which I'm afraid I grew out of a little while ago. And I just get really cold as well. I like longer garments. So um, yeah, I would say if you make the time to pre-wash your do as I say, not as I do.
Okay, I can breathe again. What else is specific to you as far as your journey goes? Do you have anything else that comes to mind?
um, Make sure you're using the right needles for the fabric. That
Mhm.
is definitely something that I have learned from. I've snagged a beautiful, very expensive viscose fabric, the ones that's like a white on the back and then a print on the top. And when you use the wrong needle, it snags it, and then you end up with those like white shards that stick out, and it's just that you can't avoid them. So that for me is a learning, but also like being on that kind of note, being aware that no matter where you are on your sewing journey, you are going to make mistakes. You're just going to be more well equipped to deal with how to not do them again, or how to kind of counteract them. So I think that's what I love about sewing and pattern making, is that it's all about problem solving. And I love that. And they're problems that we can solve normally. When sometimes when we can't, we reach out to other people, and never be afraid to reach out to somebody else, because 9 times out of 10, they will have come across the same problem and they might have found a solution. They might not. At least there'll be somebody to laugh about it with and make light of it.
Right, right. Those are great tips. Thank you. What is your favorite part of the sewing? I think I might be able to answer this, but I want to see if maybe it's different from what I think. So, what is your favorite part of the sewing and clothing process?
I think it has to be the pattern making side of things. I just love the creativity of taking something really basic and then putting your own take on it. But one thing that I do really want to start doing more of, and I've really enjoyed when I have done it, is adding embellishments, adding embroidery,
Mhm.
finding a beautiful, like vintage embroidered fabric, like a tablecloth or something like that, and then incorporating that in my design. or, you know, making a garment out of that. And that's something that I don't feel that confident about. That's an area for me to explore.
Yeah.
But I'm quite excited that there's still areas that I have to explore. You know, I'm not done. Like, yeah, I've made jeans. Yeah, I've made like, you know, I'm hopefully going to make a tailored jacket, but there'll still always be something for me to reach for with sewing.
Yeah, yes, you're right. There is always something to move into. And even probably when we've made all the things, there's all right, how do I make it better? Because you're absolutely right in that um there's such a journey in creating, and I want us to like embrace wearing whatever. Obviously, I want us to embrace wearing what lights us up, what feels like truly ourselves. And if we've made it, I want us to wear it even if it's not perfect, because I still wear garments that I made a decade ago that I'm like, oh, don't look at the inside of this. Right? But like there's you made it with your own two hands, and that's amazing.
And they're some of my favorites as well, because I've made them with a passion, with an excitement. I just had to get it done, you know, as quickly as possible. One of my favorite garments is actually a jacket that I made out of an Indian suit. So it was a skirt and then like a long kind of tunic. And I
Yeah.
made like a jacket out of it. And I just love that because I literally just took it and kind of in an afternoon with no plan at all, just kind of upcycled it into something that I literally wear every time I want to feel a bit kind of creative and like I've got that kind of handmade touch like added with the embellishment and everything to it. Yeah, I always reach for that. And I feel like me in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to toot the horn for a moment of this to say like I am all for, because I'm very nerdy this way, I'm all for planning out my project and planning and very carefully bringing in the right fabric and doing all these things. But there is a sense of freedom and beauty that comes from like, I don't know what I'm going to make out of this. I'm going to see what comes out. And like that is a super fun space to be in as well.
Mm, definitely. Yeah. Is there anything that you've been making that has kind of ticked those boxes for you?
Well, I'm a pattern drafter as well. So definitely I have core patterns that I developed and that's what I teach with often. And then I take those core patterns and I do all different kinds of pattern manipulation. So recently I took some time and I took one of my just basic like skater dress. So it's kind of like a fit and flare dress. And I turned it into a dress with a keyhole and a gathered top with sleeveless. And I put this really high slit in it. And it just felt really like it ticked on like I wanted something a little more sexy, a little more sensual than what I'd been doing. I have kind of a uniform for the most part that I like to wear. And I wanted something that felt a little more like gave you that little zing when you walked out, like, oh, can I wear this? And I'm like, yes, yes, you can wear this. You can do it. And so that was really fun to take that in that process. And I did 3 iterations of it. And I don't always do that. Um, but I wasn't quite getting the keyhole exactly how I wanted it. It was like this hole here in the center, and I wasn't getting this. I got this slit a little too high, and I was like, I was out and about. I had to run and get a safety pin because I'm like, this is too much. And I had to like
Been
pin
there.
it down. Yeah, but there is something about that creativity that's really beautiful, and I definitely have had that when I put hand stitches into my garment. Like I sometimes will make a t-shirt dress and in the lower back, I often like to bring in the waist a little bit because my waist is considerably smaller than my hips and my bust area. And I put this was several years ago, but and it just finally died. The garment just finally died, and I want to make it again. But it had these diagonal stitch lines in the lower back, which brought in the fabric a little bit to make it a little more fitted and was so beautiful back there. And it was really simple. So
Oh, wonderful.
thanks for asking. That's really fun. Oh, do you? Let me see. This conversation's been so lovely. What is, when you are teaching, what would you say is the biggest hurdle people have? And how would you suggest getting past that hurdle?
So, gosh, that's tricky because there are so many hurdles. Um, Going to a sewing class for the first time, you know, that's
Right.
a big hurdle, actually getting through the door. and worrying that everybody's going to pick things up quicker than you,
Yeah.
uh, which is never the case. Some people pick up some things quicker, other people don't, and that's cool. And actually, I always say to people, especially with the fitting classes that I do, I actually need you to all work at a different pace because I only have one pair of hands, and I can only fit people one at a time. So I actually need, Barbara to be needing a fitting at 11 o'clock, and then I need Jane to be needing a fitting at 12 o'clock, and then, you know, Deirdre to be needing a fitting at 1 o'clock. Can you all work at different paces, please? That works really well for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I think there are so many people who come to classes thinking they already need to know a lot.
Mhm.
And the reason that you come to a class is because you don't know, and that's absolutely fine. That's what you're there for. um yeah, so never go apologetically to a class. Go openly and with a clear mind if you can, and a willingness to learn, and then you'll definitely succeed. Mhm.
So my little boy is 8 years old and he's been in swimming lessons for ages. And his dad put him in one less swimming lesson because he wants him to, I don't know, get stronger in something, right? So my little boy is like, Mom, I already know how to swim. I already know all of it. I don't need to learn any more about swimming. And my buddy, I know that you do know a lot about swimming, but what if you went to class, because you're going either way, what if you went to class and were thinking to yourself, what can I learn today? What can I pick up today that I didn't know before? Because that shifts us from one, there's like two aspects to this, right? The one aspect is feeling like you don't know enough and you're not worthy of being in that class, whatever. Or there's also like sometimes I get students in class that feel like I already know all of this. I'm here because my friend needed someone to come with her, right? And I totally get that. I get that they probably do have an extensive knowledge base, but there is a beauty to being like, what can I learn from this experience? What can I bring in? And I think that allows us then when we are afraid of not knowing enough, it's like we're all here to pick something up.
And that's why I'm still going to courses. I'm going to one, like I said, in Wales with a friend, to learn how to do a Chanel style jacket.
Yeah.
Because I literally, until like 6 months ago, I ran a retreat, and I had a lady who was on the sewing bee to come and do a talk
Mhm.
for the participants, just kind of, after dinner kind of talk. And she talked all about Chanel and the Chanel jacket, and she'd brought some examples of the garments that she had made. And I did not realize, because I've never got up close and personal with a Chanel jacket. I've always been a
Right.
bit scared of going into, designer shops and looking at these beautiful garments. I want to replicate them, but for some reason I'm scared of actually going into the shops and looking at them. So I got to actually have a look at all the details, and I was like, wow, there is so much that's gone into this. I need to learn this.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited to, like I say, there's always something new to learn.
Mhm.
And going to workshops, even when you've been, teaching sewing and pattern making and doing it for years and years and years, I feel it's quite an indulgence. It feels quite kind of like I'm really pampering myself with a bit of like new learning.
Yeah, I can completely. Yeah, I understand that. So, where can folks learn more about the program that you're putting out right now, this Sew Your Own Style, I think is what it's called. Where can they find out more about that and join that if they'd like to? And where can they find you online?
Okay, so my website is My Handmade Wardrobe Patterns and .com, and the program is accessed through there. So on the homepage, just click on the banner and sew your own style. That'll take you into the portal. It's all online, and there'll be daily emails that come through to inspire you. You don't have to get those emails if you don't want to sign up for marketing. That's no problem at all. You can just follow the weekly prompts, but you'll get so much more if you do sign up to the emails. You get lots of this kind of thing, my rambles and insights, learnings, and all that. And then I also use Instagram a lot. I find it really, really good for connecting with the sewing community. And yeah, you can find me on there pretty much daily. For a while, I was feeling a bit kind of like I was feeding the monster with Instagram, but I think I've found a really good kind of connection with it now, where I'm posting what I want to post, and people are telling that they like it, so that is good.
Right.
And it feels like, you know, it's I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it to connect with people, and I think that's what we all have to have in mind. You know, whenever we're doing anything like this, there's always a way to connect with people, and you're always going to get something out of any interactions.
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. Sarah, it has been so lovely to talk to you. I am going to open up for some questions here. And real quick before I do that, I forgot to mention at the beginning that yesterday's recording has had some issues. And so those of you who are looking for the recording with NanWeb, I don't know if it's going to be repairable, but we are hoping that it is. And if not, she's not answered this yet, but I'm hoping that she'll be on the podcast so you get a chance to listen to her if you didn't get a chance to, because it was a lot of fun to talk about fabric and her fabric store that she has here in the US. So I wanted to make note of that while we're on the call. So, Sarah, are you ready for some questions?
I am, yes.
All right. I'm going to go back through the chat real quick and take a look. But Amanda, let me know if there's anything that I need to see directly, or if anybody wants to jump on, let me know that as well.
I did pop one in the bottom there for you, Tina. Do you want me to your
Yeah,
direct messages from Anne?
from Anne. Okay. I would love to hear, this is from Anne. I would love to hear what you learned about sewing with shearling. I want to add some to a collar and I'm intimidated.
Ah, okay. So yeah, I was intimidated as well because I've never used it before. There are different types. So I would go for one that's quite dense. They're all going to be polyester pretty much, unless you're getting like, you know, actual lamb's wool. But there are definitely different qualities. So don't go for the cheapest. You're gonna have to spend a little bit here, because the cheap shearling is really, really slippery, and you'll be absolutely cursing. um, so yeah, one of the things that I did was once I'd sewn the seams together, I then trimmed away the top layer of shearling so it reduced some of the bulk from the seams. So I kept, like, if I backed it with the cotton twill and then I had a layer of shearling, I then trimmed away just the shearling rather than the twill. So yeah, that's my top tips. Don't go cheap and trim.
So, I've never sewn with shearling either, or even like a fur kind of thing. And so I wonder, when you're sewing, does the shearling, does it get caught up in the stitches and you need to pull it out once you have sewn the seam, or is that not part of it?
I've got a heavy duty machine, so and it's got quite a big foot. So whatever the biggest foot is that you've got on your machine, use that.
Yep.
um, and actually, something that I had a friend who had only got a foot that had got like a big hole, a big gap in the middle, and she was sewing a fur coat. And she actually put some sellotape underneath to
Okay.
kind of fill in the gap. So not sticky side, obviously, but
Right.
just she put some tape to kind of fill the gap in the foot, and that worked really well. So it kind of kept everything down. Also using clips like wonder clips rather than pins is really, really helpful, because you just basically want to squidge the fabric into submission, because the more squidged it is, the less it's got a chance to wriggle out from underneath. And give yourself big seam allowances, trim them down afterwards.
Nice. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Stay cozy.
Okay, so Marjorie asks, what is the Sew Your Own Style program about?
Okay. So Sew Your Own Style is about learning to think more like a designer so that you can start to design a wardrobe full of clothes to express your authentic self. So in week 1, we're looking at doing a wardrobe audit. In week 2, we're evaluating that, and also what your clothing means to you and how you want it to make you feel. So we're looking at a bit of color theory as well, with that, and a bit of fashion psychology. And then in week 3, we're looking at how to kind of put together mood boards and how to start thinking like a designer, and taking inspiration and knowing what to do with it, because sometimes it can be really overwhelming when you've got all this inspiration and you're kind of thinking, well, how does this relate to what I want to make? So
Right.
I'll help to kind of deconstruct that. And then week 4, we're looking at how to actually plan your makes, and how sometimes not to plan your makes and how just to take inspiration and run with it.
Very nice.
And I should say it's a free program, so it's completely free for the next 4 weeks, run on my website and also on Instagram as well. And I've got, I think, 130 people already signed up for it, so I'm really excited to see what they're gonna discover about their wardrobes and their style.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds like a lot of fun. So let's see. Early on, oh, let's see if we have another question popping in. Is it too late to join? Somebody asked.
No, it's not too late. On the portal, the information is all available for the next 4 weeks. In fact, it's going to be available for the next 8 weeks. So you can dip in whenever you want, but you won't be getting the daily emails. So if you think you might have missed something, on Instagram, I'm putting links to the emails. So you can find on Instagram stories and in the Instagram highlight, you can find the links to the emails rather than me individually sending them out to, you know, another 100 people, which would be great if another 100 people joined up, but I think I'd be exhausted. So that's where you can find it.
Very nice. So early on, we asked what people are working on, and let's go back and see. It looks like a lot of pants.
Yes, tricky.
Anna says she's going to make pants. Jan said she's working on my first pants, loose and easy, but still the first time ever. Anne says I'm cutting out a shirt, and now I have entertainment. She must be cutting out the shirt right now. And Jean is also making pants. Diane is making a blouse. Adele says, once my cotton lawn is laundered, I hope to make a gathered at the bodice waist dress.
Ooh, nice. Classic.
Yeah, very nice. I love that. And cotton lawn is like just so beautiful and has such a nice mix between drape and body, I think.
Especially for something gathered, it's going to look beautiful. Definitely.
It will. Lisa says, I took some time this morning to sew some underwear. It took much longer than I planned, but they're better than the previous attempt.
Yes. You have to not be afraid to make them a bit tighter than you might think, because otherwise they do fall down during the day.
Right.
I can tell you.
See, and I have gone in the other direction, is that I make them even tighter than I should, because I work with knits all the time, so I'm doing like a neckband frequently, and you've got that stretch that you're pulling into your neckband, and so I have often done the leg openings too tight on my underpants. I've been like, wow, this is uncomfortable, and so there's this, like, I think with underwear you have to find like that perfect stretch balance.
Yes, definitely. And I use underwear elastic a lot as well, you know, the kind of one that has the little loops on the edge. It's called Pico elastic. So I use that rather than using the self fabric, and I find those a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I like those too.
Quite a few pairs of those.
Very nice. Kathy says she's working her way through Brooksand Camper's tops class, also working on getting better at sewing knits, especially collar bands and hems. And Mara says she's, oh, go ahead.
There's a quick question from Jean. Are slopes and blocks the same thing?
Oh, this is a really tricky question. Everybody will have a different answer. To me, so there's 3 different types of template that people start off with. So a block is usually taken either from measurements from the body with ease added in, so that it will be a close fit to the body, but with wearing ease, so it's got room for movement, or it will be taken directly from a garment, which is like the master garment, so like a perfect men's shirt that's got everything in the right place, all the, you know, shoulder seams are the right length, neckline opening is the right length, right size, etc. So that is a block. A sloper, I believe, is often what we refer to as a block, but I've also heard it referred to as a garment that is exactly to the body, with only a little tiny bit of wearing ease. There won't be any design ease at all, so it won't include any kind of personal preferences. And then another term that I've also used for that garment is a moulage, which is a very, very close fitting French term. I think it's like American and French are the same thing. But a moulage is a very, very close fitting garment with no room for movement at all. And it's usually what you'll make if you're doing like a make your own mannequin or pad out your own mannequin class. So I did that recently with a colleague who's a pattern cutter, and she helped me make a moulage and fit it exactly to my body, so tight that I literally couldn't breathe. And then we took that and we put it on the mannequin and we padded it all out. And now I've got, you know, perfect Sarah, like all curves and everything in the studio, which is very helpful. But yeah, I'm sorry that's not a very definitive answer, but I think that is, as with a lot of things with sewing, there are many terms that can be used to mean the same thing, or they can mean different things.
Yeah.
And it's a case of, you know, you pick the one that works for you and work out, you know, everything. Find out what all the different meanings are, and then pick the one that works in your vocabulary.
Right. Right. And that is like, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Really.
For sure. Yeah. We have another question here from Jan. And she says, I've just started sewing knits. Is there a percentage you use when figuring what length to make the self fabric, collar, band compared to the length of the neckline itself?
So yeah, usually 10 to 20%. But that's reduction. So I reduce the neckband length by 10 to 20%, but it does depend on the amount of stretch in the knit. So if you're working with a rib knit, you're going to need to reduce it more. If you've got a knit that has elastane in, again, you're going to need less band to go on around the neck. If you're working with a fabric that doesn't have any elastane in and therefore only has like natural knit stretch, then you're going to find that you're going to need maybe 10% less. And yeah, it is a bit of an experiment, and generally, like, yeah, I tend to go for less, as in a longer band, tack that on, baste that on, see if it works, and if it doesn't, then you can remove it and you can put it down. I don't know, do you have, because you're very well versed in knits, Tina, do you have any insights to add to that?
You had it really nailed down to what I would do. Typically I say 15% is like kind of the middle ground standard, but it is completely dependent on the stretchiness of the knit fabric itself. And I think that tacking it on makes a ton of sense. I've also been starting to embrace, and this is thanks to my friend Brooke Sandcamper, because I took her course and so I could be a beginner again. And she talks a lot about taking, because she comes from the costuming world, and taking and making little samples of things. So I think that I would suggest, I haven't done this yet, but I would love it if someone tried this, is like, what if you took a piece of fabric and you cut your curve into it like a scrap, and then cut your band, measure it, and cut your band however percentage less you think it should be, and sew it into that and just see how it behaves.
That makes so much sense.
I'm like,
It's
oh,
breaking the rules, because nowhere in any pattern would it ever tell you to do that.
right.
So you have to just make it work for you.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I love it. So Jan says, just to be clear, so if it is stretchier fabric, you use a larger percentage, and the lower percentage if it's less stretchy.
That's right. So you're going to need a shorter band if it's more stretchy, and you need a longer band if it's less stretchy.
Yep. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but if I have made something, which I certainly have in my past, where the neckband is standing up because it has not been stretched enough, and I didn't want to take it apart because maybe I starched it, or I don't know, maybe I just didn't want to take it apart for whatever reason. Sometimes I'll fold it to the inside and create a band facing, and then do a different stitch on the outside to save the garment that I'm currently working on, if that's the look you like.
That could be an absolute savior for me, because in doing my wardrobe audit, I now have a mountain of fixes. Like literally, I've got like this big crate, and then it's got like enough to fill another crate on top stacked. So I think I've got about 3 years worth of fixes, but
Right.
I'm going to review them and decide which ones are the priority. But I
Right.
think, fixes like that, I think could be my savior. So, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You are welcome. So it has been so much fun today. We are all keeping our fingers crossed that we have no technical issues with our recording, but we're going to assume we're not going to. And you will see it on the website in about a couple of hours. It takes a little while for it to render and get to me. Sarah, it's been so much fun to have you, and I hope people will jump on the website if you didn't catch that link. And we've got it all linked. Everything that she talked about is linked on our website, and you can go right to sign up for her program or see what she's up to or buy a pattern or two. So
come and see me. I look forward to seeing you all.
very nice. Thanks for being here. Thank you all for being here.